Hi, hello. Um, I want to speak to some more Taoism today. I want to speak to a specific term within Taoism, which is wuwei. Why? Because I've just watched yet another video on YouTube of someone explaining the term, which was in this case religion for breakfast, and it's a brilliant video they did. They did very well on explaining the concepts behind the term wuwei, which is often, it derives from Taoism, from Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, and it is usually translated along the lines of non-action or effortless action or actionless action, all these kinds of terms that make it a little hard to grasp. And my input, my explanation, my personal explanation of what wuwei is not so much in terms of not doing or not forcing is good, but I would translate wuwei as letting be. Alright, so what do I mean when I say let be? Letting be is not to force something or someone to be something they don't want to be. And there is many ways in which this is relevant. However, there's one which is, I think, almost not, like it's something that matters in our everyday life, in every single decision we choose to make. But it is not something that is consciously chosen. It's not something most people are aware of. And that has to do with geometry. Because there's a whole geometry to the Tao, which is what I call the way of the spheres. Buckminster Fuller called it synergetics. And that is a geometry of not forcing, but letting be. And this geometry, this way of being, can be summed up in this very model here. So what I show you now is true on every level of our existence, and there's many more significant and relevant levels to this that I'm not going into now. But I want to show you this model, which is 12 or a dozen straws, in this case steel, with a string running through them and half a dozen beads in some places. And a lot of this, I've spoken quite a lot about this because I've made a video showing how to make one and other things. But now I want to focus in on its ability to embody wuwei or not, because I think it is important for us if we want to overcome or come out of a frame of mind that has us think in terms of efficiency and inefficiency and effort and these terms, force. If we want to be free of that, then it isn't hard. We just need to let it be. And here, right now, I've connected these straws in such a way that they appear superficially to create the shape of a cube. And this is very, very, very much the uniform frame of mind that we have inherited from the ancient Greek and their specific kind of disembodied geometry, a very abstract geometry, thinking in terms of solids and these things. However, you might notice that this does not hold the shape of the cube on its own. In fact, it doesn't hold a shape at all. I'm holding it. I'm holding the shape right now. And if I hold still, it seems to be a cube, right? But if I put it down, it just collapses because it does not have integrity, which is something that comes by triangulation. So if I wanted to make this stable and actually have the shape of the cube, the easiest thing would be to introduce half a dozen longer connections in the diagonals of these so-called squares, creating a 4 eyes inside of that. If you want to know what I'm speaking to, I've got plenty videos where I'm going more deeply into this. But just to give you an idea what a 4 eyes looks like, this 4 eyes here is not big enough to hold that very shape of the cube in that size. It would need to be a bigger one than this, but this is the 4 eyes, right? And you see this is stable. This holds a shape. It can hold quite a lot of other things additionally to the shape. Now, if this is the non-triangulated cube, the way we would usually make this, force this into the shape of a cube would be to rigidify and fix the corners. So we would need hubs in the corners, some kind of strong connectors, or at least weld them or glue them in place. And all of these means are ways of creating a micro-triangulation. So on a molecular level or another one of those, creating triangulation that is just strong enough to have this rigid box shape. And then those micro triangles are able to hold both this shape and perhaps, if they're strong enough, a little more. But you know, if we're building a house like this and the earth shakes, more often than not, it gives way. So that is why we're so hell-bent on forcing the whole world into this shape, and why we're doing so much damage with it. And this is the framework that gives rise to a world, a dichotomy of efficiency and inefficiency. Because this is inefficient. And this very framework is the reason why humankind is the only member of universe that creates waste. Because we're thinking and working in this frame. However, we could let this be different. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to release these connections, because this is, after all, just a string running its course through these straws. And once they're disconnected, they become this beautiful kind of funky shape again. And again, if you want to make one or have one, I recommend taking a look at the other video of mine where I show how to make this particular model. But now let me show you the way of the spheres. Wuwei. Letting be. Because this is already something. And if I let it be what it wants to be, it's going to be surprisingly strong and stable. Alright, so without further ado, let me connect this not in squares as I did before, but indeed in triangles. Because triangles are shapes on their own, and that is because they are structures. They hold their very shape without effort, without force. And going around like so. Oh no, I took a wrong turn. That happens when one is talking while doing. So I'm gonna talk a little less for a moment, just to let me do this one more time. Non-doing, non-speaking. All right. I'm gonna go here, connect you there, and you go here. I'm still speaking my mind. There. There. And we're already getting very close to having the whole thing let be what it wants to be. And with the last connection in place, we get this. This is an 8 eyes, and indeed this is stable and strong because the entire thing has integrity. It's omni-triangulated. It's all just triangles. It would appear as if it was for 3 squares interwoven, but that is a trick of the mind because we are so trained in squares. This doesn't really have squares in it because those squares are only there because it's the collection of the triangles that hold them in place. But they don't just hold this shape in place and shape, but this can be used as a structure to build on, you know, to oops here, just to give you an idea. I can put a lot of load on that, no problem. Lots and lots and lots of weight can be carried by that structure without any problem at all, right? This is where shape matters, and the way of universe is the way of spheres. It's doing things in accordance with the pattern integrities that arise from drawing spheres together, closest drawn spheres, and whatever shapes come out of that, they are always going to be triangulated, and they always have shape as an intrinsic expression of their structure. Now, that is how to let be, because I could have tried, I did try to force this into a shape that it wouldn't want to be, but then I would waste it. I would waste all the members in it, because they wouldn't even be allowed to unfold their actual potential. Instead, they would be suffering, trying to be something that they aren't. and all the while they are something already, and what they are leads to many more things that they can become if only we let them be, right? So to make this whole thought, the sphere of thought we've been looking into now, to make it come full circle, or to wrap it up in such a way that one has a simple enough statement to take away. The way of the spheres, the way of the the geometry of the Tao, the way of non-forcing, or just simply letting be, wuwei, that way is easily wandered as long as we do what we're doing in triangles. That's the simple truth. Rather than going back, like as we're conditioned to, going back to square one, conceptualizing everything we do in grids of squares, in rectilinear orthodox orthogonality. Rather than doing that, simply play, dance, think, do, and live in triangles. And that way we're not forcing anything, and we're not even leaving ever. We're not leaving the integrity of the whole of universe. We're just playing along with it. We're not forcing the river of reality into an abstraction, which is a little bit, a channel that we take off the main river, but we realize we are the river, and as such we are able to direct the river, draw the river wherever we need it to go. And then we have the whole of universe with us. And whatever we do based on that is always going to be beautiful, it's going to be comfortable, it's going to be stable and strong, and just healing in terms of the traumas and injuries and violence that we've all gone through in millennia and millennia of boxed thinking. Call it Babylon system or whatever. The simple truth is there is no 3D reality. It's just as much an abstraction as the idea of a zero-dimensional point, a one-dimensional line, and so forth, a plane that is a square. No, there is no such things. Those are only possible if we're having somebody hold those things in place and then ignoring that somebody. If we do not ignore the somebody that is universe, then we will effortlessly and without doubt arrive where we are, arrive where we belong, where we've come from, and where we can go anywhere from, which is the sphere and Tao. Let go of that notion of a square as something, because it's really just nothing. Yes, so with that, I think I've spoken enough on this again. If you want to know more about this, please feel free to check my videos on all of these matters in more detail. And until then, Peace be with you. Love.